Bills Mafia. On tonight's Air Raid Hour, we will be breaking down, unfortunately, all things Bills, Eagles, and at least I will be having a very candid conversation. And Dave, you're welcome to join me about the future of the Buffalo Bills head coach, Sean McDermott. But first,
Welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour presented by the Cover One Sports Network and Picasso's Pizza. The Bills fall 37-34 to the Philadelphia Eagles in overtime. They fall to 6-6 on the season. They are the 10th seed in the AFC, and the Buffalo Bills will practically need to win out from here on out after their bye week to make the postseason. Our postseason starts in Arrowhead in 2 weeks. Dave, once again, the Bills find themselves in the game of the year. No one at work today wanted to talk about anything but Bills Eagles. It was the water cooler conversation. And once again, the Buffalo Bills find themselves on the losing end of the game of the year. Time is a flat circle, my friend.
Bills find themselves on the losing end of the game of the year. And look, I know there have been a lot of examples where the Bills have won games and in the past against good teams. And, you know, Greg in the Cover One group chat has pointed out, like, look, there's been plenty of times where the Bills have come up big as well and won games, and we seem to kind of focus on the losses. But in reality, the losses have been in bigger games, right? And I think that's true. And I don't really think that those facts can be argued, really. And if you go back the last couple of years between, the playoff losses, 13 seconds, the big losses we've had now culminating in this one this year, or this past week against the Eagles, the Bills defense and just the Bills in general have seemed to come up short in the biggest moments of games. And this can go all the way back to the Hail Murray, right? Like, the Bills have found themselves in situations where they have really given teams the opportunity to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, and the Bills snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. And it's happened too many times, right? I mean, and that's the problem. And it's unfortunate, right? Because especially this season, the Bills really need these wins, and the Bills have been in position to win some of these games. And at least for this season, there have been 3 or 4 games where the Bills have had the lead late in games, under 2 minutes to go, and they just squander it. So this one really stings. Like I told you before we went on, it's going to stick with me for a bit.
Pete Nan, I really like this comment. He says, feels like the Bills are the only team who could consistently prove they can beat anyone and actually lose doing it. That is a very good statement right there. You know, I'm sitting here trying to think about the Bills and just how disappointing that this team can be. And every time you feel like, okay, there's nothing else the Buffalo Bills can do that surprises me. They find a new way to top it. I mean, you obviously have the 4 straight Super Bowls. I wasn't really around for that. I don't think you were very much either in terms of remembering those 4 Super Bowls. I was aged 0 to 4. You know, I was born right before those Super Bowls. But my Bills fandom really started right around the Music City Miracle, and then it was encompassed by a 17-year playoff drought. You know, finally get to sniff the playoffs in 2017, and we lose 7-3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars in what was probably one of the most boring football games of all time, regardless of playoffs or regular season. Then 2019, you have some hope, you have some optimism. The Buffalo Bills blow a 16-point lead and lose in the 2019 wildcard game to Houston. Following year, we get to the AFC Championship game. We lose after being up to start that football game. And the next year, you get 13 seconds in Arrowhead. The next year, you get absolutely shellacked at the hands of Zach Taylor and the Cincinnati Bengals in your own stadium. This year, you lose to Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, and you have 12 men on the field. That loses you the game against the Denver Broncos that you should have won. And now you got McDermott's folly in Philadelphia. Time and time again, this franchise just finds a way to torture this fan base.
And there are other teams around the NFL that have had some historically like tough situations, right? Like the Browns come to mind. Obviously the Browns in the late 80s, right? They had some good runs and then never made it to the Super Bowl. And like the Browns have gone through like some tough stretches. The Lions, obviously, after the Bills broke their drought, the Lions now have been one of the teams with the longest playoff droughts in the league. Looks like that's going to end this year. But the way that the Bills have lost games, I don't think is matched. And the quantity of games that the Bills have lost in just heartbreaking, gut-wrenching fashion, I don't think is matched by any other franchise in the NFL.
And even during the drought, I remember Stevie's drop. I remember the Monday Night Football game against Dallas. Like there are even when we knew that this team was trash in the middle of a 17-year playoff drought, there was just embarrassing defeats as well. But they made this point on the Cover One postgame show last night. This loss would be okay. Like this loss broke me. I told you that before we came on air, and I made that clear in the Cover One group chat last night. I was venting. I somehow managed to cope with 13 seconds, and I managed to cope with the 2019 wildcard game. I managed to cope with the Denver debacle and losing to Zach. I've somehow managed, despite losing it here or there for a little bit, finding my North Star and coming back to sort of a sane place. This game broke me. I'm radicalized. I'm an adult baby, as I say in my nameplate here tonight. Like I've lost it. Like I'm not coming from a sane place tonight when I speak. I'm not. So you can all prepare yourself for that. But they made this point on the postgame show last night. Like this loss would be okay if we had just beaten Zach Wilson in week 1 like we should have. If we had just beaten Mac Jones in Foxborough like we should have. If we had just trotted out 11 defenders onto the field for that kick at home versus the Denver Broncos, we'd be going into the bye at 9-3, only 2 AFC losses, and it would be easy to swallow. We hung tough with Cincy. We hung tough with Philly. We'll get them in the playoffs. Hell, even 8-4 would be understandable. But what makes this season so tough, outside of the traumatic nature of the losses as Mac Burney comes in, what makes it feel like it's not just any other down year and we'll bounce back, I feel like we're going in the wrong direction. A down year is you're playing the number 1 schedule, you have injuries, you're losing some tough games to some tough teams. Not you're puking all over yourself against the New England Patriots and the New York Jets. That's not a down year. That's a concerning trend in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and all of these losses the Bills have had this year have been in 1-score games. They over the last couple seasons have not been good in 1-score games and tight games. And regardless of the 11 or 12 men on the field in the Denver game, you still let the Denver Broncos march down the field right on your defense, like in the blink of an eye, just like you let the Eagles pretty much march down the field right before the end of regulation, obviously held them to a very tough field goal attempt, but you really let them march right down into field goal range with no real resistance. You let them march right down into field goal range, and then obviously for the touchdown with no real resistance. You almost let the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get a Hail Mary on you. You let them march down and get that opportunity, and you let the Giants march down the field, and you got away with a win there on a play that probably could have gone either way as far as the Taron Johnson, pass interference, no call there whatever you feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you already mentioned the Mac Jones, letting him march down. Like, the end of game execution, coaching, etc. for this team has been pretty abysmal. And the reason we really probably haven't talked about it as much is because
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of situations, the Bills have blown out teams, and the end of game strategy, coaching, execution has really not been that relevant. But in tight games, that's where the Bills seem to crumble the most. And at the ends of games, especially, they just can't seem to finish.
Let's before we get to our biggest takeaway, let's talk about to me, what was the decision in this football game. I think I knew the game was over when Sean McDermott made this decision. Listen, I put this game squarely on Sean McDermott. And I know a lot of people, especially our colleagues here at Cover One, they'll give me flack for it, and deservedly so. Like I said, I'm coming from an emotional place right now. I'm not exactly the most sane person to be talking to, but there were things that happened in this football game that were out of Sean McDermott's control that if they had happened, we win this football game, right? James Cook dropped a touchdown. Josh Allen throws an untimely interception. He played literally an amazing game, an immaculate game. He had maybe 3 bad plays the entire game. One of them was a very, very untimely interception. There were 2 missed field goals. One of them was blocked. There were a bunch of costly, and we are going to debate tonight whether they were fair, penalties called against the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen and Gabriel Davis, there was a miscommunication in overtime where Gabriel Davis should have had an easy touchdown to ice the game. There were factors at play other than Sean McDermott. But I knew this game was over the second that he called a timeout to ice Jake Elliott on that 59-yard field goal. I will never understand what was going through that man's head. It is the year 2023. How are we not beyond icing kickers? You're giving a kicker an advantage, honestly, because they can go through their full warm-up. You're not getting Jake Elliott to overthink anything. You're just giving him more time to get comfortable. Mm-hmm. You want them to rush their execution. You want him to get one last little practice kick out of the wet. You want to avoid that. And he burns a timeout. I will forgive him for burning the first timeout to see what they were doing on third down. I'll forgive that. But to burn the second timeout and then to give yourself one timeout with 20 seconds left in this football game at the 25-yard line with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, knowing full well what the Kansas City Chiefs have done to you in the past in 13 seconds, knowing full damn well what you did to the Detroit Lions last year on Thanksgiving, to kneel down that ball, to not, first of all, not have 2 timeouts, only having 1, and then to kneel, I knew it was over. I knew even if we won the coin toss, this game was over. Sean McDermott damned the Buffalo Bills with that decision. And he said today, well, their kicker just made a really long kick, and we were outside, and it was wet, and they have a really good pass rush and one bad decision, and they're kicking a field goal to win the game. I don't care. He said he has full faith and confidence in his offense. He doesn't. You can't say you have full faith and confidence in your offense and not go for it there. You have full faith in your offense, except you think Philadelphia's pass rush is good, and you think that the weather is bad. You can't have it both ways, Sean. You can't say you have full faith and confidence in your offense and then give a laundry list of excuses why you don't. I'm not going to call him a name. But that decision was cowardice. It was cowardice.
Mm-hmm. And the Bills had just marched down the field, right, to take the lead. So it wasn't like, and their offense had been playing well all day. Like, it's not like the offense was struggling, and this was a field goal in a game that, was going to tie the score at 10 or something like that, right? This is a game where the Bills had already at that point scored 31 points, right? 31 points in regulation, had just gone down, scored. I agree with you. The first time out is whatever, but the second one where they don't have anything to do but to run their kicker onto the field and try the field goal, rain, whatever, the chances of him making it, I guess, were, not great, but he absolutely drilled it. And I think in that situation, if you know there's time left on the clock, you need to play as if you are expecting to have to go back on the field with your offense, and you need to have that timeout in the back pocket. And you have 2 timeouts, 20 seconds. You can get into field goal range with that. Pops here says, McD said lack of timeouts, whether an Eagles pass rush. Yeah, lack of timeouts is his own fault.
His fault. He knew exactly what was going to happen after that kick went through the uprights, or if the kick went through the uprights. He knew he'd have somewhere between 20 and 22 seconds. And he knew that if he didn't ice the kicker, he would have 2 timeouts. He didn't have timeouts because he chose not to have timeouts. That was 100%. That was 100% on him. Like, just, he says, he might do things differently if he could rewind time. You can't, Sean. And time again, you'd say you do things differently if you could rewind time. And time again, we're not learning from these mistakes. He didn't trust his kicker, which I don't blame him. And he didn't trust his offense. I don't care what he says. He didn't trust his offense. You can say all you want. Your actions say differently. They do. All right, let's get to already starting off hot, and we haven't even gotten to our biggest takeaways of this football game. So let me pull the graphic up here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hit us up in the comment section with what your biggest takeaway, your one singular biggest takeaway, the one thing you're going to take away from this football game is. And Dave, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can point to. You can talk about the officiating. You can talk about the bill, like Sean McDermott's, decision making, whatever. But for me, the biggest takeaway in this game is a culmination of things, and maybe it is Sean McDermott related, but it's the Bills' inability to win close games in the recent past, right? When the Bills have gone out and they've blown out teams, this has not really been an issue, but the Bills' inability to really win close games at a regular rate, and for people to say, oh, that's luck or that's football, okay, I can buy that for a game here or there, but it's not really luck in my mind or football when it's a trend of being significantly below 500 in 1-score games when you're a team of this caliber. If you're a bad team and you're losing 1-score games, I can kind of understand that. Drought era Bills losing 1-score games, I can understand that. They're not a good team. This is a really good team that's losing a lot of 1-score games. I think 6 or fewer points in all their losses have been the difference. And that has been such a huge factor in the Bills' record and why they're 6-6 this year. So their inability to kind of close out a lot of these 1-score games, and that coupled with the end of game collapses by the defense in situations where Josh Allen has given this team the lead and the offense have given this team the lead in multiple occasions this year with less than 2 minutes to go. You said, right? He didn't trust his offense. Maybe he's too trusting in his defense and himself in these situations, because time and time again this year, the defense in big moments at the ends of games, and really in other situations too, the 3rd and 15 touchdown in this game to Devonta Smith, has just come up short, right? It's just come up short. And I know there have been injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but against teams like the Denver Broncos and the New York Giants and the New England Patriots, I don't care that there's been injuries. You shouldn't let these teams be marching down the field on you to win these games. So to me, my biggest takeaway is this game accentuated the Bills' inability to win the tight ones at the end right now.
I would definitely agree with that. Pops Mafia comes in and says there's too much on Sean McDermott's plate to be a guy who's in charge of calling the defense and to be a guy who's in charge of making some of these decisions late in the game, like when to call timeouts, where to call timeouts, whether to go for it or not to go for it. Can't disagree with that one. Walter S. comes in and says McDermott has the best quarterback in football, arguably. He doesn't trust him in 20 seconds or in 4th and 7 situation, but he trusts an injured defense. How do you overcome a coach like that? Totally agree.
That's a great point.
RJ Melville comes in and says, my one takeaway, the NFL will never allow this team to win a championship. No matter how good they are, who the head coach is, the NFL will just never allow it. We will talk about the officiating tonight. Yeah, it was pretty brutal. Eric Strauss comes in and says defense can't make a stop when it matters the most. We've seen it too many times. That's our missing identity. Frustrating. Pops Mafia follows it up saying Sherfield was on a different playbook on 2 pass attempts. Play Isabella. We will definitely get into that tonight as well. LTB comes in and says takeaway. We're 0-6 in overtime. Can't disagree with that. Whiskey comes in. Gabe Davis is not clutch. Horrible ball tracking and not getting his head around. Same old Bills. I feel you guys. Like I feel a lot of
There's some good ones in there.
What you guys are saying. Walter S even comes in and says takeaway. We need a 2-score lead to beat an elite team. Honestly, at this point, I don't even think that would be enough. So the faith I have in this team under Sean McDermott right now is at an all-time low. My biggest takeaway, and Bills Are Electric came in with a comment earlier. He said something about how the Pagulas, since the Pagulas are not going to fire Sean McDermott this year, what is the best we can hope for to finish out this year and then going into 2024? The best you can hope for is the Buffalo Bills get healthy. The Buffalo Bills hit on some draft picks because they ain't going to be busy in free agency. And Joe Brady is him. That's pretty much what would be your hope heading into 2024 with Sean McDermott at the helm. And that is why my biggest takeaway is that Terry Pegula won't, but that Terry Pegula should relieve Sean McDermott of his head coaching duties at the season's end. I think it's time. McDermott has a career winning percentage higher than Marv Levy. The Bills have won the second highest percentage of games of any major sports team in America. That's across 5 sports the last 5 years. Sean McDermott is a legitimate top 10 head coach in the National Football League. He will be the head coach of a National Football League team again if fired by the Buffalo Bills within a week of his firing. However, as you mentioned, our inability to win close games, our blunders in big games, the stench of 13 seconds that just permeates through this organization. I don't have faith that he can get us over the top. I said, I've managed to bring myself back to sanity. I've managed to keep the leash tethered through a lot during the Sean McDermott era. And the final thread broke. It tore last night. I'm unhinged. I am radicalized. I am an adult baby. I'm not saying the grass is greener, but I would much rather align Josh Allen now, heading into his age 28 season, with an offensive head coach that could potentially carry him through the end of his career. That is where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm. I think that there is a fallacy that happens right now, and it's tied to the fact that this team went through a 17-year playoff drought that, and Mark has said this, and even Nate Geary has said this, and I don't always agree with a lot of things Nate says, but I've been agreeing with him on this point.
It's getting bad when
I'm largely agreeing with. I love Nate.
I was liking Ty Dune tweets last night. That's where I'm at.
And the fact is you at some point need to potentially be willing to take the chance to go for it all and potentially acknowledge that you've reached a ceiling with a certain person running your team.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I talked to Fernando about from Buffalo Rumblings when I was on his show, and he asked me about McDermott, was like, is it time to get rid of McDermott? And I was like, look, from an on-the-field perspective, I think for football, it's the hardest change to have where there's not as much affected. Like in basketball, you can change a head coach. It's a 12-man team. You have a group of 5 to 7 guys that mainly it's not that the changes aren't as drastic. The changes aren't as permeating throughout your organization from everything top to bottom as a change would be if you remove Sean McDermott, right? You have the internal culture of the team, you have the routines, the processes, right? So it is more than just like on the field stuff that you're going to have to be willing to bite the bullet on if you get rid of McDermott. And it may come with some teething, right? Some growing pains or some regression, and that may come to fruition on the field as well. Like, so, like, I don't disagree that a change maybe should be made, but I also think that there's more at play than just kind of like the on the field stuff. And so how much of that really gets impacted, I don't know. I do think that it does get to a point where you have to acknowledge that maybe this is as far as this guy can take you and be willing to make a change to try to get to the mountaintop. And like, for a team that has never won a Super Bowl, that to me, it is worth the risk, in my opinion.
And, you know, you look at the longest tenured coaches in the National Football League. It's Bill Belichick, it's Mike Tomlin, it's Jim Harbaugh, it's Pete Carroll. And then it's already, you're at Sean McDermott, Kyle Shanahan, and Sean McVay. What do all of the longest tenured coaches in the National Football League have in common? Every single one of them, except Sean McDermott, has been to a Super Bowl. That's the reason why they have the leash that they have. The other one, the seventh one, is Kyle Shanahan, who has one of the best teams in football this year and looks like he's probably going to maybe be heading to another Super Bowl. And he's been there, even though he's been on the losing end of it. Sean McDermott right now has a leash that is probably longer than most NFL owners would give a coach who can't seem to get over the top with a quarterback the caliber of Josh Allen. You don't see head coaches get the chances that Sean McDermott gets. I'm trying to think of the number of coaches who were fired while their team was in the middle of a window. I don't think Andy Reid in Philadelphia is a good example, because I think Philadelphia was coming out of that window when Andy Reid was fired. They had some down years after he was fired. Chip brought him up a little bit, then they crashed back down before Doug Peterson took them to the Super Bowl. But you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers firing Tony Dungy, hiring John Gruden. You look at the Denver Broncos firing John Fox and hiring Gary Kubiak. There's something to be said about, hey, he's just not the guy to get you over the top. You respect the foundation he laid, but it's time to call in a closer. And Greg Tomsett made this comment on his show last night, and we just talked about it with Bills Are Electric. What do you hope for in 2024 as a Bills fan? You hope that Joe Brady is him, that he's the answer. But if Joe Brady doesn't get you the Super Bowl, right, because Sean McDermott flubs it up again or for any other various number of reasons, but the Buffalo Bills offense is humming again like it's been humming the last 2 games, and it's consistently doing that for 17 games a season, Joe Brady won't be your offensive coordinator in 2025. He will be a head coach. And he won't be the head coach of the Buffalo Bills because we have Sean McDermott. So then maybe you can go out and find your Bobby Slowick or your Ben Johnson, or maybe you're stuck with a Matt Canada or Ken Dorsey. If you're stuck with a Matt Canada or Ken Dorsey, like the guy you hired just doesn't click with Josh Allen, the next thing you know, you turn around and Josh Allen's 32 years old. So for me, instead of playing the musical chairs, I would rather cut bait now and go get the alpha play caller. Go get the number 1 play caller on the market to come be your head coach. And I understand that calling plays is not just the only thing a head coach does. I get that. But you could probably find, and you could probably put a staff in place with all of Terry Pagula's Pagula bucks that could make up for any of the flaws that your head coach might have if he's more of an X's and O's, savant play caller type. But that being said, Is there a John Gruden? Is there a Gary Kubiak? Is there a Bruce Arians? Are those guys? Is there a guy like that on the market? I don't know. My top 5 candidates, number 1 would probably be Ben Johnson, consensus top offensive mind. I think right now that's not a head coach. I like that he puts an emphasis on the run because I still think the Buffalo Bills need to do that and continue to do that in the years that progress. I think Sean McDermott is right. The Bills need to run better and run more and stick to it. There's Jim Harbaugh, who brings a Super Bowl pedigree. He's a proven winner, instant credibility, known trench builder. You have Bobby Slowick, who might be too green, but in my opinion is probably the second best non-head coach play caller on the market. What he's doing in Houston with a very small sample size is pretty awesome. You got Todd Monken, who would probably be the Gary Kubiak type hire, pushing 60. Really, he's only ever been a college head coach, but he's been a notable offensive coordinator in a lot of different organizations for a long time. And then 5, I just had Joe Brady, right? Maybe these vibes are real down the stretch, and maybe he can be the wild card. Maybe he can be the guy that you upgraded the head coaching position. And then our guys over at the Bills chat pod threw out Bruce Arians. And I didn't even think about that. He wasn't even on my list. So I like that as well. Hell no to Frank Reich. Probably not to no. Probably a hell no to John Gruden. Definitely out on Eric Bieniemy because I don't think he emphasizes the run game enough. But that's also that to me, these are the 5, 6, 7 guys. This is your market. So you got to ask yourself, do any of these guys float your boat so much that you are willing to toss Sean McDermott aside? I'm at that point. Yeah, I'd do it.
I think if you, again, like it's the unknown versus what you know you have in the building, right? What you know you have in the building is a guy who's reestablished the culture, who has brought back the sort of winning atmosphere, credibility to the organization, gotten them out of the drought, etc. That, again, this is the fallacy again of comparing to the drought. Like, we shouldn't just be happy to have a good team at this point, right? We are now, 5 years into 5 years into Josh Allen being like at this caliber of player that he is. And I know that it's not all on the quarterback. I get that, but that's why I think a change like this might be warranted, right? Because it isn't all on the quarterback. A lot of this stuff does come back to Sean McDermott and the reasons for why this team has lost in big moments. I would be willing to take that chance because at the end of the day, what are you really potentially missing out on by doing that? Like what? Like losing in the wild card round or the divisional round again? Like, okay. Like, that's not the aspiration of this team with Josh Allen at the helm, right? Your aspiration is to win a championship. So if you are willing to take that chance, like, it's risk reward, man. Like, you got to take some risks to get the ultimate reward at some point.
And I will say this. Steve Rose comes in and says, looks like Ross Tucker was right. I would push back hard against that because what did I preface this with? Sean McDermott's a top 10 head coach in the National Football League. Maybe not this year, but over the course of the last 5 years, he's a top 10 head coach in the National Football League. He, of the 5 major sports leagues in the United States of America, leagues, not just football, leagues, dude's got the second highest winning percentage of any organization behind just the Kansas City Chiefs over the last 5 years. He's a good coach. It could just be stale here, right? Like, it could just be plateaued here. So I would 100% push back against the maybe Ross Tucker was right, because putting him at 22nd is still disrespectful. Even now, it's still disrespectful compared to some of these schlubs that some of these National Football League teams trot out on the sidelines. All right. Before we get to our takeaways from the offense and the defense, a word from the guys over at the Cover One Buffalo podcast about how you can best support us here at Cover One.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
All right. If you don't think that I've lost it too much, smash that like. And if you feel bad for Dave for having to put up with me tonight, smash that like. That'll help us here at the Air Raid Hour. And as always, you can click that share button. And if you think anyone wants to come wallow in their own self-pity with us here at the Air Raid Hour, click that share button, message this to family, friends, anyone you think would enjoy joining us here on the live stream. Let's talk a little bit, Dave, about one of the bright spots the last 2 weeks, and that would be the Buffalo Bills offense. It's always fun when the Buffalo Bills offense is good. And I'll tell you what, by the fourth quarter last night, I was finally back to feeling confident that when the Buffalo Bills needed to make a play, the Buffalo Bills needed to would make a play. Specifically, when Josh Allen needed to make a play, I felt confident that Josh Allen would make a play. I think that was maybe top 5 to 10 career performance from Josh Allen, considering everything going on in this game. And for him to lose, and then for him to just be spit roasted all over ESPN today, because for some godforsaken reason they have a vendetta against him, it's just painful. It stings. But Josh Allen on the day, 29 of 51 for 339 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick, 9 carries for 81 yards and another 2 touchdowns on the ground. Big run with his legs in crucial moments. That touchdown to Diggs was just an unreal tight window throw. Some of his throws early on in the game, that eye manipulation on that throw to Davis along the sidelines that set up that 1st and goal, where he kind of looked in at Dalton Kincaid and then threw an unreal pass to the sideline to Gabriel Davis, was just one of the reasons why Jalen Hurts will never be in the same stratosphere as Josh Allen as quarterback. He was in his bag, and minus the interception, minus the overthrow to Dalton Kincaid that might have gotten Dalton Kincaid a little hurt, and the Gabriel Davis miscommunication, just an out of this world performance from QB1.
Maybe arguably his best performance of the year, honestly, maybe outside the Miami game. Given the conditions, given the pressure on this offense, the pressure the offense has been under, like doing, obviously they put up the 32 points against the Jets, which was great, but then to come back and follow it up with another 31 in regulation, 34 total. Josh Allen really, I mean, he was the best player on the field to me. And you talked about him running the ball, the rushing yards, 35 more rushing yards in this game than he had in his highest other total this season at 81 here. 46 was his high before this game in a game this season. So clearly that was such an X factor in the performance, and a nice mix of like some design stuff and some improvised stuff, which has always been kind of like the sweet spot for him, right? Some of those draws that are obviously have been effective throughout his career, and then some of the improvised stuff and kind of making those key first downs. And to me, he played an awesome game. Like the interception aside, on the offensive side, and a lot of the penalties the Bills had were on the offensive side. But in a game where the Bills had 92 plays, right, for there only to be 3 or 4, I'll call miscues outside of penalties, that's pretty solid.
Especially when you throw a 50
solid day.
Darius Slay said this after the game too. He's like, that motherfucker threw the ball 51 times. What do you expect him to be perfect on every single one of them? Darius Slay was just nothing but complimentary of Josh Allen. I mean, and Darius won't say this, but he had to pass and interfere with like 10 of our receivers in order to stop this guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, all in all, like, if you're seeing things on networks and stuff talking about how like Josh Allen is the reason the Bills like, it's just so lazy and like not true at all. Like, he's the reason the Bills had the lead once again with less than 2 minutes to go in the game. And by the way, after he did throw that interception and the Eagles scored, like the Bills answered right back after that. So like they answered, the offense answered the call.
Yeah.
And again, miscues like aside, like talk about intentional grounding, whatever, and like the missed field goals, like Josh Allen's performance in itself was incredible.
He walked off the field twice with the lead with very little clock, right? And once the Bills allowed the Eagles to tie the game, and then the other time the Bills allowed the Eagles to win the game. But Josh Allen walked off the field twice with a lead. He was not on the field last play of the game. Now, you can argue he should have made that throw to Gabe Davis. The two of them would love that back. It was an option route on a cover zero blitz. It happens. Guys who have been together for 4 years, that shouldn't happen, but it happened. But that was one of maybe 3 miscues he made the entire game. Absolutely incredible game from QB1, Josh Allen. James Cook. What are your thoughts on James Cook and the up and down roller coaster nature of his play the past couple of weeks?
The drop would have been touchdown early in the game. I thought was really going to come back to haunt the Bills, and maybe it did. I don't know. In some ways, I thought he really grinded it out on the ground. Had 16 carries, had some good runs late in the game, and really like the rushing attack as a whole, buoyed by Josh Allen's numbers, was pretty good overall against an Eagles team that had been tops in the league in rush D heading into the game. Bills had the most rushing yards against the Eagles of any team this year. I think James Cook's game was largely pretty good other than the drop, right? He did make a nice, difficult catch, I think, on another play where Josh Allen kind of zinged it across to the near sideline, right? If you're watching on TV, and he did have to go out and make a nice reach and jump for that and ended up making a nice play on that. So obviously a lot of the focus is going to be on that drop he had, but I do think largely he played a pretty good game against a tough run defense and did contribute a little bit in the passing game. Obviously that one down the sideline, that was pretty impressive. He did end the day with 6 catches as well. That one down the sideline was 29 yards. So I did think, even though it only had the 2.7 yards a carry, long of 11, that it was a pretty good game from him other than the drop.
Yeah, they had the drop. You had the fumble issues a couple of weeks ago. I thought he was a little dancy early in the game, but I thought he settled down. I'll tell you what, and I've been banging the drum for this all season, right? Since July, right? Like, hey, funnel this offense through Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, and James Cook. It's a guy I think deserves to touch the ball 20 to 25 times a game between carries and catching. I'm starting to wonder if maybe that was the wrong theory. I think for this football team, as currently constructed, I think it's the right theory because I think James Cook is the best back that we have. But Latavius Murray is good for who he is. Leonard Fournette, if he ever gets on the field, I think will be good for who he is. Ty Johnson is good for who he is. But I've been watching a lot of Detroit lately because there's a certain offensive coordinator that I just want to get a little custom with in case maybe the Buffalo Bills decide to make a decision, right? And last year they had DeAndre Swift and they had Jamal Williams, and offense clicked, right? And this year it just seems like it's going to another level because they had Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round and they added this guy named David Montgomery, who is a legitimate bell cow running back in the National Football League. And Jahmyr Gibbs is good. And a lot of people were calling for Jahmyr Gibbs to get more carries earlier on in the season. And then David Montgomery got hurt. And he did. Maybe James Cook shouldn't be this bell cow number 1 running back. Maybe going forward, heading into the 2024 season, maybe the Buffalo Bills need to look at Cook like the Lions look at Jahmyr Gibbs. And maybe the Buffalo Bills need to focus on finding a David Montgomery, right? Like, I almost feel like David Montgomery is just like the North Star of that Detroit Lions offense. He's just, you know what you're going to get from him. You know you can go to him. He's just so structured and so sound and just so forceful, right? I don't know. Like, Latavius Murray's not that. Ty Johnson's not that. Leonard Fournette will not be that. Now, it's a luxury to have two running backs of that caliber, certainly. But listen, the Buffalo Bills did what they could with the cap constraints that they had this offseason. And they added Latavius Murray and they added Ty Johnson and Damian Harris, etc. But if they have a chance to get their hands on a running back of a David Montgomery nature, I would love to maybe lighten the load on James Cook a little bit and find maybe that North Star back to go along with the flash that is James Cook.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thought. I think it will depend on the offensive philosophy, right? If you get a guy like Ben Johnson, let's say, who that stylistically is kind of his approach, right, is having these two guys almost like evenly split, right? Very evenly split when it comes to at least the recent games. Jahmyr Gibbs steps in when David Montgomery missed a couple games with that thigh injury, performed well. But guess what? Like, as soon as David Montgomery was back, they kind of went back to that split, and it just has worked really well for the Lions. Now, I know they had a tough game on Thanksgiving, but by and large, over the course of the entire season, that type of tandem has worked well, and they weren't afraid to shake things up when they had two really good backs in DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, and we see what DeAndre Swift is doing now with the Eagles. So sometimes it's just about the right combination of guys. I actually think that, you know, that combination that we had last year with Singletary and Cook was pretty close to maybe that type of combination. But obviously the Bills weren't going to pay Devin Singletary, so
and we didn't use it right. Like,
we didn't use it right.
Like Ken Dort, we were not running the ball last year, except for maybe the Chicago game. Like, we're running the ball this year, and the addition of Osiris Torrance, I think, helps. Finally, in year two, I think Aaron Cromer and some of the things that he's bringing to the table, I think that helps. And I think adding Dalton Kincaid, going 12 personnel early, that emphasis helps. A lot of different things, I think, have contributed to the Buffalo Bills being better. And that was the second point I wanted to make about the running game was it's not just that we're running the ball well. I mean, our running backs only average 2.9 yards per carry between the three backs, but we're sticking with the run game. We're putting an emphasis on the run game. It's providing, so I don't want to say a backbone because Josh Allen is the backbone of this defense, but it's hardening the skeleton, I think, of this offense, right? And it's just sticking with it is keeping a very, very good flow. And that last offensive drive in regulation where we just kept handing the ball off and they couldn't stop us. They knew what we were doing and they couldn't stop us. And we milked all of that clock before scoring that go-ahead touchdown, which ultimately the defense blew it. But that could have been a defining moment. That could have been the way I felt about Joe Brady in that moment, the way I felt about the Buffalo Bills in that moment. I was just like, damn, I can't believe we blew so many games earlier in the year. This is the offense that I have been dreaming about for 2 years. This versatile, this able to beat you in a multitude of ways, these tools in your toolbox, just being able to switch things up. It finally all clicked in that moment, and then the defense had to ruin it. Like, it was so frustrating.
Yeah, and I will say that Romo has recognized that in calling
he's
a
one of the
couple
guys
Bills
who
games.
really has, yes.
Yeah, he has recognized it. He's talking about how the Bills can be dangerous because they can run the ball now when they want to. And really, for the most part this year, they have, right? That drive was special. The Bills got the ball back, I think, with around 6 or 7 minutes left in the game. And at one point I was thinking, like, is it possible the Bills are like truly trying to just like take this all the way down? And I think they were. Obviously it got to the point where they were at the 3rd and 4 and they had to score, and they did. I would have loved that last play. I mean, I think it was a bad spot they gave Cook. I think he got closer to 3 yards than the 2 they gave him. I thought it should have been like a 3rd and 3, in which case maybe you have the opportunity to just like run 2 short running plays to get a first down still and use all the clock. But again, you got to score when you can in that situation and hope that it's good enough. But that's the fear that you have right now with this team, right? Is that any time is too much time on the clock for the opposing team. But that drive was really special. They ripped off 3 10+ run plays, 10-yard plus run plays in a row to start the drive, and then a 6-yarder before they kind of settled down there into the red zone. But like that's impressive against an Eagles run defense that was number 1 in the league coming into the game.
Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills wide receivers now. And let's start with the number 1 receiver on this football team, Stefon Diggs. Solid, albeit maybe by his standards, a letdown type of game. I think Stefon Diggs will tell you he left some plays on the field in that game. He had a couple of drops. He was coming off the field a ton. CBS was making a huge deal about it, insinuating that it was Joe Brady and Sean McDermott taking Stefon Diggs off the field, which, as the guys over at the Cover One Buffalo podcast correctly pointed out, Stefon Diggs comes off the field when Stefon Diggs wants to come off the field. No coach takes him off the field. So maybe he was injured or was just struggling with something like medically. Maybe there's like an unreported illness, something like that. I don't know. He just seemed a little off in this game. Obviously, he really ramped up late and finished the game with 6 catches for 74 yards and an incredible touchdown. He did take that huge dirty shot from one of the Philadelphia Eagles defenders on Josh Allen's touchdown run as well. But thoughts on Stefon Diggs' day?
Yeah, a couple drops. I know there was one sort of on that. I can't remember if it was the overtime drive or the drive before, but like the Bills ended up getting the first down anyway. But yeah, I mean, ultimately he made one of the most important plays in the game on that touchdown catch where Josh Allen threw it between it seemed like 5 to 6 guys, and did make a couple nice plays as well otherwise. But yeah, I mean, this was a game that Gabe Davis had got his 100 yards, got his moment, and probably should have even had a bigger game with that miscue at the end. But yeah, look, I think like you look at this game from both sides and you see like Devonta Smith was the kind of guy who kind of shined for the Eagles. Gabe Davis was that guy for the Bills. AJ Brown, Stefon Diggs did their thing in this game, maybe a little bit, role reverse from the number 1 to the number 2s in this one. But I still think, pretty good game from him, all things considered.
Gabriel Davis, as you just mentioned, 6 catches, 105 yards and a touchdown. Big game. Gabe was out in full force. Obviously, there was that play at the end of the game that was unfortunate, that option route. What were your thoughts on Gabriel Davis's day?
Yeah, I mean, a good game from him. Take away that miscue. He was making some good catches. He made the nice catch, like you mentioned, Josh Allen escaping the pocket early in the game and finding that first down that ultimately led to the Bills' first points of the game. I think the problem with him has always just been the consistency, right? He's been great in the run game as a blocker. He's been great in moments. It's just been like the consistency as a productive wide receiver that we've been missing, and like maybe unfair criticism or fair, however you want to view it, depending on your expectations of the sort of quote number 2 wide receiver. But I had a feeling, coming into this week, we said it was Shakir last week. It could be Gabe Davis this week. And that was what happened. And that's what we said, right? It could be any given week beyond Diggs and Kincaid, whether it might be Shakir or Davis or someone else. And this week it was Davis.
Yeah, to me, and again, I got my eyes on 2024 now for the most part. Like I said, the playoffs start for the Buffalo Bills in Arrowhead in just under 2 weeks from today. But Gabe Davis is a fine number 2 receiver. You mentioned he wears a lot of hats and he contributes in the running game. He's on the field all the time. That's important. The offense is going to miss this when he's gone. But in terms of actual box score production, yeah, he is very hot and cold, but that's what a number 2 wide receiver in the National Football League is. And that's what Gabriel Davis is. He's a number 2. And people will want to throw names like Devonta Smith and T. Higgins in your face when having a conversation about Gabriel Davis. And I understand why, because the Buffalo Bills want an heir apparent to Stefon Diggs. They want a guy who, when Stefon Diggs is gone or when Stefon Diggs is slowing down, they want another alpha to take the mantle. And that's not Gabe Davis. Gabe does what he did tonight, if he does what he did tonight, week in and week out, he's definitely worthy of giving him the 15 million AAV or the 13 million AAV, whatever he's going to get on the market. It would be worthy of that discussion, but he doesn't consistently give you that box score production. He is not the heir apparent to Stephon Diggs. He will never be an alpha wide receiver that can take over a football game solely on his own when the focus is on him, like Stephon Diggs can. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, and this comment has already come up in the comment section on a multitude of occasions tonight, and I will be driving home this narrative all summer long, all spring, excuse me. It's time for the Buffalo Bills this offseason to go find their Devontae Smith, to go find their T. Higgins. And they need to draft a wide receiver in the first round of the 2024 NFL draft. Even if they have to trade up to do it. Like, the Buffalo Bills need to find the heir apparent to Stephon Diggs, and they need to add a wide receiver 1B to this offense as opposed to a wide receiver 2. And then once they do that, the insane possibilities you have pairing a 1A and a 1B with threats like Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid will be out of this world offensively, out of this world. So to me, that's what the Buffalo Bills' number one priority should be this offseason, is finding a 1B wide receiver to just build the juggernaut on offense. But let's move on to the next wide receiver here, Khalil Shakir. A big game, 3 catches, 47 yards, and a touchdown. He was doing some Cole Beasley things, being a safety blanket for Josh Allen. He was making some explosive plays down the field. Khalil Shakir is fun. He is exciting. He is a breath of fresh air. I don't think he's a traditional number 2 receiver, but I think that he is going to make some plays here for the Buffalo Bills for a number of years on this rookie contract. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out.
Yeah. No touchdown for him, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was a typo on my part. I apologize.
That's okay. But he did have that crucial 31-yard catch down the sideline in the honeypot, as Greg Thompson calls it, between the safety and the corner. And that was a big play for the Bills at the time, right? Because they were deep in their own territory. That was a 3rd down, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously he come up with a big play. And so multiple weeks in a row now with Shakir, 30+ yard plays. He has really come on, has been proving that he can be a reliable ancillary weapon, right? And so again, week to week, whether it's him or Gabe Davis, like, the more that the Bills can have optionality wise and more that guys that they know they can rely on, right? And I think at this point, Shakir has proven himself this season that he has caught essentially every ball thrown his way this season. I think he only has 1 drop, which is on that crazy throw in the Miami game, but he has really stepped up, and it's been really nice to see. And look, I mean, maybe the expectations were too high early on him, but I think he's settling in right now into a sweet spot where he's found his role. He's been productive. He's not being asked necessarily to do too much, but when his number is called, he's getting enough opportunities to where he's involved in the game and that he can get into the groove of the game. So really happy with what he's been bringing to the table.
Trent Sherfield and Deontay Hardy can be the next discussion point here, because swings and misses from the Buffalo Bills 2023 free agency class. I would like to see the Deontay Hardy inactive. I would like to see that carry over into the Kansas City game and beyond. I would like to see Andy Isabella again. I think the weather conditions maybe took away some of the motion and some of the ways in which they could have utilized an Andy Isabella. So I would like to see him get a legitimate opportunity to do some of the things that the Buffalo Bills wanted to do with Deontay Hardy. But for whatever reason, Deontay Hardy is just not what they thought they were getting when they made that free agency signing. And then I've oddly supported Trent Sherfield on this show by saying, like, our expectations for him were too high. He's a solid special teamer / wide receiver 5. Like, he can do a hell of a lot worse at depth receiver. Like, he's got a boundary frame. He can also play in the slot. Like, everyone chill. He proved me wrong on Sunday. He was targeted twice, and twice he ran the wrong route. One cost us a touchdown, another cost us a first down. Just a bafflingly awful game from Trent Sherfield, and a guy who has not gotten a lot of opportunities this year to be so ill prepared when your number is called. Crazy to me. Crazy.
Yeah, I think two different stories here. One, Sherfield being ill prepared when his number is called, but for I think what the Bills signed him for ultimately in the money they gave him was probably indicative that they expected him to mainly be a special teamer. Deontay Hardy is the one that to me is a bigger swing and a miss just because of the money that you signed him for. You didn't sign Deontay Hardy to be like a special teamer other than like a returner. And you would have expected him to be part of the offense, right? Maybe in that Isaiah McKenzie type role.
I think they wanted him to do Emmanuel Sanders type things. Like Nyheim Hines got hurt and forced him onto special teams. And then I think they realized he lost a gear. So they were like trying to keep him underneath. I think when the Buffalo Bills signed Deontay Hardy, they envisioned a guy who could open things up down the field like Sanders did. And they did not get what they paid for at all. And, you know, the Cover One group chat, we've had conversations about we think his route running is lazy when he's not targeted. Joe Marino has mentioned on his podcast, like the dude had a significant foot injury and maybe it zapped the explosion and the explosiveness that he had, because what he put on tape in New Orleans is not what he's putting on tape in Buffalo. Like he's not the same player and it's not like he's that old. So just a swing and a miss. And I don't think either of these guys will be on the Buffalo Bills roster in 2024. And it'll be really interesting because I think the Buffalo Bills have their wide receiver 1 in Stephon Diggs. I think they have their wide receiver 3 in Khalil Shakir. And I think they have their wide receiver 5 in Justin Shorter. I think Justin Shorter will be the Trent Sherfield type next year. Well, he'll be gunner on special teams. He could be a niche Jake Kumaro guy to come in when needed, etc. I think they got 3 guys. I think they got 3 dudes for next year. But the 2 spot is going to be open, and the Buffalo Bills are going to need to fill that spot. I mentioned go get a 1A, not a 2. Or a 1B, excuse me, not a 2. The 4 spot is going to be open. That's going to need to be a player who can play a little inside, play a little outside, make some plays when their name is called upon. And the number 6 spot is going to be open. And if Nyheim Hines doesn't come back and Deontay Hardy is gone, the Buffalo Bills are going to need to go find a new Andre Roberts, a new Nyheim Hines, a new Deontay Hardy, a guy who can return kicks, preferably a guy who gives you a little bit more pop too than Deontay Hardy has given you this year. So the Buffalo Bills wide receiver room is going to look vastly different next season, with really Diggs and Shakir and maybe Justin Shorter being the only stalwarts. And we haven't even seen Justin Shorter outside the preseason.
Yep. And it's one of those rooms that's interesting because like at least going into camp and throughout camp, like felt pretty good about where this room was in 2023. And like, it's fine right now, right? For 2023, I think just based on who you've got working in this offense right now between Kincaid and Diggs and Davis and Shakir, like we still have Davis on the roster. So for this year, it's not so much an issue, but next year we'll see. That's why I also agree we should draft a wide receiver in the first round.
Speaking of receivers, Dalton Kincaid, 5 for 38. He was invisible in the second half, something that we've had conversations about. Other
2 weeks in a row, by the way.
We've had conversations about, like that cannot happen. A lot of people pondering, whether or not he was maybe hurt. One of Josh Allen's few bad throws of the game, and a lot of people give me flack for it. They hit him in the hand. Josh Allen will tell you that was in those conditions. That was a bad throw. You slightly underthrow Dalton Kincaid there, so he can come back to the ball. He can turn and he can run upfield. Dalton Kincaid catches that ball. He's getting lit the F up by Kevin Byard. So a business decision was made by Dalton Kincaid there, who could not come down with that catch, which was slightly overthrown by Josh Allen. And maybe he was a little dinged up on that play because he certainly came off the field and then he was invisible the rest of the game. But the Buffalo Bills got to find a way to get the ball into the hands of Dalton Kincaid in the second half of some of these football games.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row where he didn't show up, again, this one may have been more because of that. I still trying to figure out maybe how that wasn't like a defenseless receiver on that play. But again, we're going to get to the officiating here in a bit. But I did like that they were going to him early and often, as we suggested they should. Eagles came in as the worst DVOA pass D against tight ends. he was involved early. And Allen was kind of getting into a groove, hitting him in multiple places on the field. Like that just needs to continue right through the entirety of these games. And I do think if that ball was laid out a little flatter and Kincaid had been able to, get to that ball earlier, and like you said, Josh Allen had made a better throw, who knows, right, how the rest of the game plays out, but we'll see. I mean, they never really reported any kind of injury, so I don't know.
Yeah. The offensive line, all things considered, another solid outing for them. Are they perfect? No, they're not perfect, but they, for what they are and for what we need them to be, they have been very solid, especially of late. They were really solid in this game. And a special shout out to Osiris Torrance for getting his ass downfield on one of those Josh Allen touchdown runs and pushing him over the goal line and into the end zone. That was a really heady play by Osiris Torrance. All right, on to the Buffalo Bills defense now, which is a tale of two halves, because
It really is.
in the first half, the Philadelphia Eagles offense went 3 and out. Then they had a 78-yard touchdown drive. Then there was a Leonard Floyd tip, Terrell Bernard interception, a 4 and out, a 3 and out, another turnover, a Rousseau fumble recovery, and then obviously they got the ball and then they went into halftime. So in reality, I mean, you had practically 3 and outs. One was a 4 and out, 2 turnovers and a touchdown, 7 points. It was an immaculate first half of football. But, as Eric Turner was going back and watching the game back today, he's one of those guys who is just an absolute freak and has a chance to rewatch the game. How he has the time to do that, I don't know. I think he might have some kind of watch that makes time stop. But he was pointing out to us in the Cover One group chat, like, maybe the Bills defense in the first half was more just about Jalen Hurts not being on his game, because Jalen Hurts started to get into his game in the second half. And in the second half, he started rolling out more. They started running the ball more consistently. He started finding some of his outlet guys. He started working the ball on the field. And next thing you know, yes, they come out, they 3 and out to start the second half, but then a 62-yard touchdown drive, a 75-yard touchdown drive, a 24-yard touchdown drive. That was courtesy of the Josh Allen interception, a 3 and out, and then a 44-yard field goal drive to tie the game, and then a 75-yard touchdown drive to win the game in overtime. The Buffalo Bills defense surrendered a field goal when it was most important, and then a touchdown when it was even more important than most important. They cost us this game. They surrendered 30 of the 37 points they gave up in this game in the second half. An absolute tire fire of a second half. Just flatly outmaneuvered and outcoached. Sean McDermott was lost in the sauce, and Brian Johnson was just taking him to town.
Yep, 30 points allowed between second half and overtime. Only 7 in the first half. I did think early in the game, maybe Hurts was off his game. Maybe he's just like loosening up that knee a bit, because we don't know how many times we have to hear about how he has a bruised knee. And is playing through it, but the Bills were getting him off his spot pretty early in the game, right? I felt like the pass rush was
yes,
not getting home, but it was effective in getting him off his spot and forcing him out of the pocket and forcing him to one side of the field. And as Pop says, Floyd abused that backup right tackle in the first half, but it was a different story in the second half. Like, almost no pressure on Jalen Hurts in the second half of that game. Like, he was comfortable. He was running the ball more in the second half as things kind of loosened up for him. I mean, ultimately the Bills did sack him twice, but only for 7 yards of losses. And one of those was kind of on a scramble where I think Linval Joseph got credit for a sack on one where he ran out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage. So the pass rush just wasn't getting there in the second half. And then the Eagles, who inexplicably did not use DeAndre Swift in the first half, and finally started using DeAndre Swift in the second half.
At one point in the first half, I was like, is he hurt? Because Kenny Gainwell's been sitting on my fantasy bench just collecting dust for months now. And now they play the Bills, they're going to play. I was like, is he hurt? Like, did I miss something?
It
I had
was
to go
a
to my phone to
weird
double check.
And that's why I think it was kind of a combination of like maybe the Bills defense did play a little bit better in the first half, but also the Eagles were kind of like out of sorts as well. And then it just kind of flipped. Like they got DeAndre Swift going, had some big chunk plays from him. Hurts started running the ball. They started getting Devontae Smith involved. And so it was a tale of two halves for sure. And the Bills really, they were just giving up way too many easy throws, I felt, in the second half, just in fear of giving up a big play. And looks what happens. Like 3rd and 15, you have a mini Hail Murray with Jalen Hurts to Devontae Smith, just absolutely gutted me. And it was at that point I really thought, like, it doesn't matter how many times the Bills come back and score, that this defense just isn't going to stop this Eagles team in the second half.
Between the Cortland Sutton one a few weeks ago and
oh my God,
it's just, I don't want to harp on Micah Hyde too much, but I mean, he was just out of sorts on that play. I don't know whether it was him, whether it was the play call, but it's really sad, right? Like, to go from Micah Hyde being that rangy free safety that makes the play in that wild card game against New England against Mac Jones, where you're like, we got a guy who can do that, to him getting embarrassed by Zacchaeus, right? Like their 4th string wide receiver. Like that's just it's sad to watch a guy like Micah Hyde not make the plays that he used to make.
Yeah, and at this point I would imagine that this is going to be it for him, right? I mean, again, not under contract, right, in 2024.
No,
so yeah, he's probably done, right? I mean,
we're probably going to draft a safety in the first round of this year's draft, even though I want a wide receiver. We're going to take Cooper DeJean from Iowa. I'll complain about it. He'll be good. But yeah, he I don't think he is long for the Buffalo Bills. And it'd be really interesting to see, honestly, if the Buffalo Bills don't try to get out of Jordan Poyer's contract too, and just completely reboot it there at safety, because Taylor Rapp's contract is up as well. And DeMar Hamlin and Cam Lewis aren't starting caliber players. So it's going to be a weird offseason too, because then you have a decision to make with Trey. Do you bring Rasul Douglas back? I know he's under contract, but you're going to have to restructure that contract because it's a lot of money. It's not guaranteed money. I thought Rasul Douglas had some wolf plays in this game too, especially that last play of the game. I thought he didn't really exactly make the most humble of efforts to stop Jalen Hurts at the goal line there. Tyrell Dotson had a chance to make a play in this game, and Jalen Hurts depantsed him. Again,
that's unfair to Dotson, though. That's a bad situation.
It's a bad situation, but there's a reason why, despite the fact that PFF says he's the best linebacker in football, he clearly is not. And he is not Matt Milano. And the injuries took a toll on this team, right? Matt Milano maybe makes that play. Maybe the Buffalo Bills can play that last play differently if they have different personnel out there, right? Maybe this, maybe that, maybe like, there are a couple of people in the comments section that said it's time to stop blaming injuries, and I agree. Rasul Douglas is more than a capable cornerback fill-in. Linval Joseph is more than a capable space eater. He's not the pass rusher that Daquan Jones was, no, but I think he stopped the bleeding there in terms of helping the Buffalo Bills with their run stopping and freeing up Ed Oliver to do Ed Oliver things. The only one that didn't really replace was Matt Milano, and that it definitely showed on that play there. But to look at the positives, Floyd, Oliver, Epinesa, Rousseau, they were all bright spots as pass rushers in this game. I'm really looking forward to Gregory Rousseau and Ed Oliver and watching those two continue to get older, get better, and really just be stud defensive linemen for this football team. I really want AJ Epinesa and Leonard Floyd to be Buffalo Bills in 2024. I don't know how realistic that is because of the anchor that is the contract of Von Miller.
Yep. I mean, that's going to be, I think, harder for me to swallow than if Micah Hyde's not back because his contract's expired or they decide to move on from a guy like Poyer and getting out of his contract earlier, or Douglas, right? Because they may have to end up deciding between like a guy like Rasul Douglas or Leonard Floyd, right? That could be like, or Rasul Douglas and AJ Epinesa, like that.
I think they'll find a way to get AJ back, and I think that the hope will be another year rested Von Miller will do what Leonard Floyd does. Because I don't think I don't know if Leonard Floyd's going to want to come back to this. Like Leonard Floyd's be like, find me a team that can finish a close game. And he looked all the way out too. Like, I'm not going to get too much into what Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson did on the sideline there with the Philadelphia fan. And the reports today, I'm not going to say I blame them with some of the things that were reportedly said towards them, but like Leonard Floyd was just sitting, like 4 Buffalo Bills were just charging at this guy. And Leonard Floyd was just in the background, like, what are you guys doing? And then finally walked in there after Jordan Phillips shoved the guy and was like, get to the bench, you idiot. Like, I yesterday was in the middle of my rage tweeting and said some things about Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips and whatever. Like, I'm not them. I was not there. I'm never going to sit there and judge the way they reacted, the way that they did. But I think Leonard Floyd was more of a professional in that situation than Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson. As awful as what that person was probably saying, and as terrible as the Philadelphia stadium personnel were not getting those people out of the stadium, like you just can't do what they did. And Leonard Floyd was the adult in the room there. So, but yeah, Von Miller, I would make him inactive. Like, Joe Marino was saying this on his podcast today too. Like, at what point do you just send a message? Like, dude, you can't be out here. And I was honestly surprised. Like, Joe is usually Mr. Cool, right? Like, he's not going to lose it. And he's gotten pretty heated the last couple of weeks between.
He's been on McDermott too.
He's been on McDermott, and he's been on Von Miller, right? And I was really shocked. And when he's sitting there, saying it's time to make Von Miller inactive. Like, yeah, I'm on board. Like, give Kingsley Jonathan a chance. Give AJ Epinesa as many reps as you can. Give Leonard Floyd as many reps as you can. Hopefully, after this bye week, Greg Rousseau is fully rounded back into form from his foot injury. Give the guys who deserve it run. Give the guys who are giving it their all run, because a guy who knows what he's looking at more than I know what I'm looking at on the football field, and Joe Marino is like, dude, saying he's dogging it out there. Like, and if he's out there trying his gosh darn best, and he's just really fighting to try to get back into the shape he needs to be in, that's one thing. If he's out there dogging it and not doing what he needs to in the run game, and not taking the proper edges, and not making the proper effort in tackling and the things of that nature, get him off the field. Send a message. I don't care who he is. I don't care how much he's paid. I don't care what he says on his podcast. Get him off the damn field. And that's also an indictment on Sean McDermott. What are you doing, Sean McDermott? Like, this team is in the middle of a fight for its playoff life, and you're strutting that on the field when you have a guy like AJ Epinesa making plays like crazy, when you have a guy like Kingsley Jonathan who's done nothing but make plays when given the opportunity to make plays, and you're strutting that on the field in key situations. That's coaching malpractice. That's coaching malpractice right there. Terrell Bernard, awesome though, making some more plays. I love Terrell Bernard. I'm really excited next year to see Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano healthy playing next to each other. I think the Buffalo Bills just have a really fun playmaker in Terrell Bernard.
Fun playmaker. Obviously, Dorian Williams getting some playing time this year, getting some experience under his belt. Will be nice to have Milano back, presumably healthy for next year. And will be nice to not have to have the Tremaine Edmonds middle linebacker, whatever conversation this offseason, right? The conversation will likely be centered around maybe the safeties or the defensive line or the wide receivers. So it will be very nice, I will say, to not have the conversation about linebackers this offseason.
We will be having conversations though, because Tyrell Dodson, do we bring him back? Do we not bring him back? How much do we pay the PFF's number 1 graded linebacker?
Number two.
Oh, number 2 now. Sorry.
Yeah, Fred Warner's ahead of him. So okay. Tyrell Dodson, Fred Warner, one in the same.
So $12 million AV for Tyrell Dodson.
Yeah, just give him the Tremaine Edmonds contract.
All right. So on, ladies and gentlemen, to special teams, and we've had to put the special teams graphic back up because the second we took the special teams graphic down, because it was like 3 weeks where there's just nothing to talk about, they decided they wanted to stink again. So Tyler Bass, 2 missed field goals, 1 blocked, no longer Mr. Automatic, and it's starting to become a trend now for Tyler Bass.
Yeah, it's not been a great stretch for him. Obviously, he did make those 4 field goals in the Jets game. Thought maybe like he was kind of back on track, but before that, couple games in a row where he's had misses. Had the one blocked in this game. Those are crucial points in this game, and I don't know how much of the block was his fault or what. But the fact of the matter is like you can't have that happen in this big of a game. And you look at the other side of the coin in Jake Elliott, perfect on the day, drills that 59-yarder in the rain. And, the kicking game was important, right? The kicking game was important. I know, Elliott only had the 1 attempt in the game. Bass had 4, made only 2 of 4. But man, like, those 6 points ended up being pretty important, right? I mean, they were, and like I know one of those, like we never should have been in the situation that was in, because one of the misses actually happened after like the whole Josh Allen horse collar intentional grounding fiasco, and then the Bills end up getting no points on that drive, just like a total and utter meltdown on that drive as far as the results. But like you gotta make those kicks, right? I mean, look, I get it. He's not going to make 100% of his kicks, but like you got to go 3 for 4, right? You can't go 2 for 4. So tough stretch for him. Look, in the long term, like the Bills aren't going to make a move at kicker, right? Like Tyler Bass is their kicker. They gave him the extension. Like he's their kicker, right? They're just going to have to kind of deal with this. Didn't have this type of adversity necessarily his first couple years, and now he's going through it. So, I think all kickers generally go through something like this. Maybe not Justin Tucker missed a field goal last night as well.
Yeah,
so
true.
look, all kickers miss at some point. So just be happy you don't have a guy like Anders Carlson or someone like that that's like kicking for you, right?
Matt Amendola, the rookie from New England. I think Bill Belichick paid him to miss that kick, by the way.
Well, I mean, he's only in because Fairbairn's hurt, but yeah.
No. I'm sorry. I was talking about the New England kicker. I can't remember.
I was thinking of Amendola from.
No, I said Amendola, and then I said the New England kicker because I couldn't remember his name. It was like Ryland or something. So
yeah, Chad Ryland.
The kid out of Maryland. So I think he was paid to miss that kick. Sam Martin. I honestly didn't pay attention when the Bills were punting. I'm a bad fan. 42-yard average, 3 inside the 20. Was he good?
Not especially. I mean,
okay.
he was.
I'm not gonna
lie.
I don't remember him punting. I don't like. I think
no. He had a couple. He had a couple good punts where like they got inside. Like they had the fair catch inside the 20. But like compared to his last 2 games, yeah, he was good. But he wasn't. It was. I'll say this: it was acceptable, right? It was like it wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was like it was fine. It was like
it was better than Matt Hawk.
Yeah, it was an inconsequential game from Sam Martin.
Shakir, I like Shakir. There's no pop in the return game with him. I think we need to find a bona fide return guy in 2024. I was all over Britton Covey. A couple of drafts ago.
He's had a good year.
I was like, I don't care if the kid's a 30-year-old Mormon. He's made some big plays. He's just going to return kicks and punts for you. He's going to be the Gunnar Olszewski. He's going to be your Braxton Berrios. Go draft him in the 7th round. And what happens? He's a UDFA. The Philadelphia Eagles sign him. And for the last 2 years, he's been a plug and play punt returner for them. And he's made some pretty nice punt returns over the course of his damn career. It was such a god dang common sense thing to do. And I was shouting. I was oddly shouting it like on every other draft show that we did. I was throwing Britton Covey graphics up. I think I wore a Britton Covey t-shirt. I was all over Britton Covey, and to watch him return a big punt against us was sad. All right.
Vindication for you though, a little bit.
Vindication. So it did feel a little good. We will definitely talk about NFL officiating, but before we do, if you are looking to eat your feelings this week, whether it be this weekend while watching teams that aren't the Bills, which will be a nice reprieve. Boy, was it a bad year to have a late bye week. or you're just watching college football championships, you're watching NFL football, red zone, etc. There's this hole inside of you that you need to be filled by pizza. Head on over to Picasso's Pizza, 4 great Western New York locations that cup and char pepperoni. There's no better pizza in Buffalo than Picasso's Pizza, Buffalo Pizza since 1980. Order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're an out-of-towner like us, and someone in the comment section was asking earlier, where can I get some good pizza? picassospizza.net. They will mail you your pizza across the country. It is worth every penny. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right. This is typically the point of the show where we talk about who the Buffalo Bills are going to play next. We don't have to worry about that because the Buffalo Bills are going on a bye. I haven't sent you my draft of ideas for our bye week show next week, but I'm looking forward to just like taking a peek at the 2024 Buffalo Bills and like having some conversations about like some guys and who will be a part of this team in 2024. So I don't know if you're ready to go there yet, but I'm going to send you some ideas this week. Maybe I can convince you to be ready to go there.
Last time
I'm not in the mood for who's the Bills MVP of the. I'm not in the mood for that this year.
No, I mean, it could be a good time to do a little bit around the NFL type of look for the playoff hunt. So maybe we'll do that as well. It could be a little bit of a potpourri type show next week.
But Steve Rose comes into the comment section. Jabroni of the week, NFL officiating. So let's get into it to close the show here this evening. Sean Hockley and his crew were in their bag. The Philadelphia Eagles are now 5-0 against are 5-0 when Sean Hockley calls their games,
and 5-0 ATS as well.
And the Bills, someone shared this in the comment section. I don't know if it's true or not, but they shared it in the comment section, so it must be true. The Buffalo Bills are 1-12 in Sean McDermott's career against Hockley's. So even Papa Hockley is in it. And apparently, person in the comment who said it earlier in the show, so we got Jerry Hughes to blame because Jerry Hughes used to claim that Papa Hockley was on the take. Jerry Hughes is not in the Bills anymore. You can't take it out on us, Sean Hockley. You can't do it. So whatever Nick Sirianni is paying you, I will gladly find someone who will pay you double. I don't have the money, but I will find someone who does. But looking at this football game, you have the horse collar on Allen, where Josh Allen gets the penalty. And then Dean Blandino had the audacity to come on TV today and say it should have been offsetting penalties. Dude, he only threw the ball because he was getting ripped down by the throat. Like, that was a horse collar and a horse collar only. Give me a freaking break. 2 blatant pass interference on Darius Slay that went completely uncalled. The refs were staring right at Trent Sherfield and Stephon Diggs on those calls. You have the late hit on Stephon Diggs on the Josh Allen touchdown. Plus, you had the defenseless receiver knock on Kincaid. I wasn't too mad at either of those. I kind of feel like maybe Nicholas Morrow, who I think was the linebacker who got a shot at Diggs, kind of just ran at Diggs, and Diggs just the speed that they were going at. I wasn't as mad as some other people were on that late hit on Diggs, but you have a block in the back on Neal that is completely uncalled on special teams, but yet we get a phantom Balin Spector face mask where we never saw the replay of it on television. It was called during a commercial. You have the awful holding on Connor McGovern. I mean, I wrote awful in my notes twice. Didn't realize I did that. Then you have the AJ Brown fumble, which I agreed with the people on TV that it wasn't a fumble, but then I was watching Sunday Night Football and the same exact play happened and it was a fumble. So there's just no consistency from game to game. I shouldn't have a list of 10 things here that are just completely embarrassingly bad. You shouldn't. That's not okay. And there's maybe one thing that went against the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was the roughing the passer on Allen. But at the end of the day, that was still helmet to helmet. Like, even if it wasn't that bad, it was still helmet to helmet. Like, what are your thoughts? This is wild.
I mean, there was at one point, it was like still the first quarter was like maybe the first quarter winding down, or was still, I feel like it was like maybe early in the second quarter, the Bills already had 7 penalties against them. And it figured the one time where they were going to get bailed out from a defensive holding call, the Bills had a holding call on the same play. So, of course, they offset and the Bills have to redo the third down. And that one, of course, like that is after the Bills had already had like 5 or 6 penalties. To me, the horse collar intentional grounding fiasco kind of highlighted the day, but there were other things as well. The 2 pass interference missed calls, especially the one late in the game on Diggs. Now, fortunately, the Bills didn't end up getting a first down on the play after that. But man, like the blatant jersey grab. I mean, the guy's staring right at him.
His jersey's ripped.
Like, how do you miss that?
His jersey was like his
Josh Allen's jersey was ripped too. Yeah. I mean, so the block in the back, I was yelling at the TV on the punt return. I was like, block in the back right there. They call it on every freaking punt in the NFL.
At the Bills,
do flag.
The Bills certainly get it all the time.
And no call, of course, on that.
Yeah.
Multiple holdings I saw as well in the Eagles' offensive line. Those weren't called on some of the Hurts runs.
I made this comment early in the game. I mean, Philly had 1 penalty in the first half. Like they were allowed to play a completely different game than the Buffalo Bills were. That's my issue. If you're bad at your job, NFL officials, it's fine as long as you're bad both ways, right? Like at least then you can justify it. The Philadelphia Eagles were legitimately able to play a different sport than the Buffalo Bills were allowed to play yesterday. They were able to grab more. They were able to hold more. They were able to be more physical. They were able to be more aggressive. They were able to hit harder. They were able to do all of those things that help you win football games because they had carte blanche to do it. And the Buffalo Bills even tried to remotely match that physicality. There's flags flying all over the football field. They weren't allowed to play the same sport for the first half of that football game yesterday. And to me, the worst part is like the national media was up in arms, right? Social media was up in arms. Fans are up in arms. Players are up in arms. ESPN, Fox Sports are up in arms. Twitter is up in arms. Everyone's up in arms. Roger Goodell loves every second of it. To him, it's not a PR problem. To him, it's a PR win because people are still watching football and they're not going to stop. And he knows that. So he, on top of not having to spend the money it would cost for full-time officials, which would be a very high price for the National Football, as much as they are $1 billion industry, it's still going to be a pretty penny to have to pay all of those officials and to pay their retirement and to pay their insurance, to do all that. It would be an undertaking for sure. It would be a big chunk of change. On top of not having to do that, because the people are going to watch anyway. The social media backlash over all of these calls, the rage, that's still engagement for the NFL, baby. That's more content for the NFL, baby. You might not be talking about the NFL in a good way, but you're talking about the NFL and you're playing the video clips and you're turning on the games and you're getting mad and you're yelling at your TV and you ain't turning it off.
Yeah.
That,
I mean, until
it affects,
it's a win. Until it affects the viewership, it's not going to change, unfortunately. I do think that there's this kind of like loophole where like the officiating is really not held accountable to any real standard. And they don't have to really answer to anything. And if they do go through a pool report, they pretty much just say this is just how we saw it. And there's no ramification.
He doubled down. Sean Hockley doubled down and said, this is how we saw it. Sorry, shit out of luck. He doubled down. And no one's going to hold him accountable. He's not getting a $43,000 fine in his mailbox like Jalen Warren is for like pass blocking. Like,
and this is the thing, right? Leon says, if it continues, I will stop watching. And it could get to that point where some people will stop watching, because I will say
it's happened to the NBA. The NBA's had that problem.
This game is a microcosm of the bigger issue around the league, though, of officiating this year in 2023. And this has really been building up maybe over the course of since the COVID year, but like 2023 officiating has maybe been the worst we've seen across the board, across the length of the entire season in forever, maybe like ever, right? It is directly impacting the outcomes of games. It is slowing down games. It is frustrating to watch these conferences these guys are having. It is really frustrating to watch, at least for me, seeing these stupid former referees add their commentary that like adds zero
Every network
value
has one.
whatsoever.
It's so
It's like we don't need that.
we
Like
we live in a world where these networks have to have like, it's crazy that they all have to have one. Like, it's
like
wild.
they all annoy me. Like Terry McAuley, I think's the worst of all of them
Yeah.
on NBC. Like it's
I
just
like Blandino and I like Sterator, but at the end of the day, I'm still like, why are they here?
yeah, it just doesn't add value for me. And so
Mhm.
like maybe it helps some fans who maybe don't understand the rules when they explain some of the but at the end of the day, like it gets back to the penalties. I think less so about the reviews. It's more about the penalties and just being so inconsistent. I mean, the big thing after yesterday was like comparing the Keenan Allen fumble, right, to the
Yep.
AJ Brown non-fumble. And one was called a fumble on the field, one was not. And in both cases, the play stood, right? And if referees really want to be consistent, they should do more of like what Tony Romo said, right? Let these plays play out, call them turnovers on the field, because you always have the ability to review a turnover. That will then lead itself to more turnovers because more plays will stand, right? Because they're going to be too afraid to change the calls on the field in those situations. So it's kind of like a catch-22, but something has to change for consistency's sake, right? One way or another.
Walter S. coming in saying, did you guys talk about a few weeks ago how the NFL, they used a promotion. They used an image of Josh Allen pointing on a graphic, and it was sort of Josh Allen pointing, I think, at his statistics. Like, so it was the Josh Allen point, and then it was like his box score on a graphic. So they find Josh Allen and they give him a penalty, but they also use that image in promotional materials for the National Football League. That graphic was removed by NFL media, by the way. But yeah, a number of Bills fans pointed that out on social media, and I had a good little chuckle at that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that should just about do it for this evening. Dave, I'm really surprised that we somehow managed to do this in under 2 hours. I'm proud of us. I really am.
I'm proud of us. I think, we will go into next week. We're only going to have the one show since it's the bye week. We won't have the pregame show. So, proud of us for keeping this to a civil 1 hour, 40 minutes tonight.
And I wasn't even supposed to be here, right? Like I texted you. I was like, listen, family emergency. I'm really sorry. Can't be here. You did a great job on the pregame show. And then I texted you like, 10 o'clock last night. I'm like, fuck this. I'm coming on.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to make it happen. Don't you worry. We got some things to talk about. So luckily I was able to move some things around and we were able to do the show this evening because it was much needed. We always need to have these therapy sessions after a Buffalo Bills loss. Not having it after the Broncos game was tough. It stung a little bit.
It stung, but also I was like not too
proud
of that.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I was too. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much as always. You guys you bring such an incredible energy to the comment section. You always bring great takes to the comment section, great questions to the comment section, great things for us to think about and ponder to the comment section. Keep doing what you're doing every week. We love you guys. You guys are the third host of this show, but you could also help us by, after this show is over, commenting on this video with your biggest takeaway from Bills Eagles or your thoughts on, I don't know, maybe Sean McDermott's future as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. You can also just say some kind words, give us some constructive criticism, anything you want. Just leave a comment in the comment section after the live stream has ended. It'll really help us with the algorithm. Smashing that like helps us with the algorithm as well and helps get this show in front of as many eyeballs as humanly possible. So thank you guys so much in the comment section. Like I said, you guys make the show what this is, and we'll be back next week, 9 p.m. I want to talk 2024. I know maybe you're going to want to put a plug in it. So I'll see if maybe I can coax a segment out of you.
We could coax a segment. I'll agree with you.
And we'll talk a little bit about big picture stuff around the league, look at the playoff picture, all that good stuff. So until next week at 9 p.m., thank you guys so much, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!